Welcome to Pep Talks with Jeanne. I'm your host, Jeanne Pepper. I started doing Pep Talks as a way to inspire you to do intentional acts of kindness and to further the goals of #BlazeItForward. Since its inception, Pep Talks has evolved, and now I use it to interview people actively making a difference in this world through their volunteerism, community service, or careers. My guests are all here because they have dedicated their lives to making this world a better place. Join us as we delve into the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of these truly inspiring and hardworking people. This season, we will be using a panel format in some of our episodes to bring together synergistic guests to discuss topics that weave the social fabric of the world around us. Welcome to another episode of Pep Talks with Jeanne. I'm delighted that we have Kanan Durham in our studios today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So what's special about you?
Well, beyond, the fact that I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, professionally, I am the executive director of a nonprofit called Pride at the Pier. That's an entirely volunteer staff. We are an Orange County queer advocacy nonprofit, and our entire mission is to try to get the LGBTQ community here and our allies more engaged in civic systems and our local politics as queer issues become more and more prevalent in our local community.
This is fantastic. And part of the reason why I wanted you here is I have been wanting to know what the LGBTQ community is doing in politics or civically here. I haven't heard much, but I have seen you in the news. Yeah. So tell me when you started, why you started, and why you are the executive director.
Yeah. Well, we the reason I'm the executive director is because we started very small, and when there's only so many people, it's very easy to rise to the top. So. But the actual way that we started was in late winter, early spring of 2023. And this was when the Huntington Beach City Council passed an ordinance that was, in effect, a pride flag ban. The council does not like it when it's called a pride flag ban, so I'll explain why we call it that. The ordinance prevents the display in any official capacity by the city of any flags that are not listed in, it's the U.S. flag, California flag, the military flags, POW flags. And this was, in effect, a pride flag ban because the only flag that was not listed that had flown previously was the pride flag. So, and this had been a campaign promise from the individuals who ran and then pushed this ordinance forward. So, in response to both the ordinance itself and what we saw as some homophobic and transphobic statements that were coming out of the council, myself and a handful of a few other people decided that we would go and fly the pride flag on our own time on the Huntington Beach Pier. And this started with just every Sunday for a couple of hours a day, going with our regular size pride flags. And then one of my colleagues, Ashley, who is still within the organization, she's on our senior staff, she had the fantastic idea of a giant pride flag flying over the side of the pier above the waves. And we were able to get some funding from a local civic engagement group called Protect HB. We ended up making the largest homemade Progress Pride flag in California. Didn't mean to do it that big. It just turned out that big. And so mid-May of 2023, we had what was in effect the first Huntington Beach Pride, and had a whole bunch of speakers, and we all marched down to the end of the pier and flew this giant pride flag. It's 24 feet by 33 feet, and had that waving for about an hour, which was visible from the pier. Yeah. And And that was originally all we were going to do. It was just a response to what we saw as xenophobia from our community members. But while we were there, we had all these people who came in attendance who said, I never knew there were this many queer people in Huntington Beach, or I never thought I would see the pride flag flying here. And moreover, we had a lot of people who said, I went to those city council meetings and that was awful. I'm never doing that again. And that was something that we saw as a problem that needed to be addressed. So we formed into a group and eventually became a nonprofit. Our entire mission is to educate, connect, and empower the Orange County queer community to get involved in local politics and civic systems to fight xenophobia here.
Wow. Okay, there's just a lot to
It's a
unpack
lot.
here. A lot to unpack for me. I started to get a little teary when you were talking about that, because when I was growing up as a little girl, that was the beach that we used to go to. We lived on Brookhurst Street. We used to walk. I used to walk there when I was in the first grade with my dad. We'd walk the mile to the beach, and that's where I'd play, and that was the pier. So, and I never dreamed when I was, so young that, one day that this would affect me so greatly. Yeah. And I was just thinking about that, about if I had only known then what I know now. But, it's the way it goes. Life, you learn. You live and you learn. And we are all learning the hard way, unfortunately, how we need to treat each other. But I'm so glad that you did this, because I think it gives a lot of people a sense of security, knowing that their gay child or their gay relative has a visibility, that that there are others, that they are not alone, and especially for families that have people in their family that are, because we worry a lot more than our family member that's LGBTQ. We worry a lot more, and it also affects us. That fear
absolutely.
And insecurity of not knowing, if our loved one will be okay, they'll be treated fairly. So. So it makes me a little bit emotional when I think about that, because, when you're young, you don't understand how unfair this world can be. You just go to the beach and enjoy yourself. But the truth of the matter is that unless something is done about this, then people won't be able to go to the beach and feel safe and have fun and enjoy themselves, because they have to worry about, whether or not they're going to be discriminated against or treated unfairly.
And that really is the intersection of two aspects of our work, is that, on some level, some of what we do is visibility. We've expanded to, we try to cover all of Orange County. We've gone into other spaces in Orange County, but we do our best to be visible. We ended up being that giant pride flag. We ended up being in the 2024 4th of July parade for Huntington Beach. We had 40 openly queer people walking with that giant flag.
Oh, I'd like to be there and walk with you.
Absolutely. We might be there again.
If I'm in town, I want to do that.
So some of it is the visibility aspect. And then some of it is also trying to address, where xenophobia and bigotry pops up on an institutional level. And in my experience, growing up as an LGBT person, I knew where to go if I wanted to go into a pride parade, but I didn't know where to start if I wanted to fight anti-gay legislation, or if I wanted to push back against, homophobia in my school board or in my city council. And so trying to find a way to help people not only find community and be visible and provide that light for the community, but also giving tools to make sure that, I don't know if you've ever heard the term that visibility without protection is a trap. And so we are trying to provide both visibility and protection, and those go hand in hand.
Oh, that's really interesting. I have not heard that before, but it makes a lot of sense. I think that what you're doing is really, really necessary. And I wonder how much you help other communities in Orange County. Are you mainly just Huntington Beach, or would you be in Irvine if they pass another ordinance that says we can't have a pride flag on our city or civic center?
Yeah, so that's part of what we try to do is we try to keep an eye on agenda items that are happening in, whether it be on the county board, because Orange County Board did also pass an identical pride flag ban to Huntington Beach back in 2023, or when you're seeing policies happening in our school boards. Orange was working to pass their forced outing policy. Capital Unified tried to pass it. Or also when we look at the activities of anti-LGBTQ activists, some would call them agitators, who are trying to bring that sentiment into a city council or a school board meeting. So to give an example with Irvine, we've been in Irvine a number of times for public government meetings. In 2023 and 2024, there were a number of anti-LGBTQ folks who were asking for the Irvine USD School Board to ban pride flags. And fortunately, as it currently stands, the Irvine board has been very firm that they will not pass any policies or ordinances or resolutions that in any way negatively impact the LGBTQ community. But we as an organization feel that it's still important that queer folks and our allies show up and speak in opposition to people who are showing up and speaking and saying that, the pride flag is the degenerate flag, or that this is, you get Gays Against Groomers who will show up and go up to the podium and speak about this. So
did you say Gays Against Groomers?
Yeah, they are an anti-LGBTQ group that it's a little confusing.
Is that like Queers for Palestine?
So that's a whole other topic. But they are generally gay men and lesbians who will go and speak against any policies that they think are bringing LGBTQ acceptance into spaces where children are. So they're a lot. So, but they'll show up to Irvine, and
so they don't want this taught in schools, even though they are part of the community.
Yes. Yeah. So they were in Temecula a couple years ago, which I realize is outside of Orange County, but as an example of curriculum, the Temecula school board removed, I believe they did pass this ordinance, they removed curriculum in high school history classes that taught about Harvey Milk, and Gays Against Groomers was there. So it's they're not a friendly organization to the LGBTQ community, but even though Irvine did not. It wasn't on the agenda. It wasn't something that was going to be voted on, but we felt it was important that we didn't let that, what I would consider hatred, be pushed at from the podium in a public space without opposition. Mm-hmm. I think there's an idea that, California is we're a big blue bubble, and that it couldn't happen here, and I don't think that's the case. I think that we have a responsibility as a community to each other to make sure that we are actively engaged in refuting hatred and bigotry and xenophobia wherever it shows up.
Wow. Is there anything going on right now that we need to be aware of?
Oh, that is a big question.
Like right here in Orange County, like what is the next domino that's going to drop here?
Well, one thing that I want to bring attention to is something that's going on the county board right now. So you may be aware that last summer the Groundswell, which is
I know what that is. Yeah.
So Groundswell was an organization that was responsible for tracking hate crimes and hate incidents.
Yes.
And for anybody who's listening, a difference between a hate crime and a hate incident is basically a hate incident would be somebody doing a Nazi salute, where it's like that is hate that is directed towards, a specific demographic, but it's not illegal, right?
Right.
For your First Amendment rights, you're allowed to do that, as reprehensible.
It's still
as it may be.
offensive. Yeah.
But if you spray paint a swastika on somebody's house, that's a hate crime because it's property damage.
Right.
So that's the only difference between the two. So Groundswell was an organization that was responsible for tracking that and also for trying to do work within the community across a variety of demographics to fight hatred in Orange County. They lost their contract from the county in the summertime. And normally the hate crime report that Groundswell puts together would be put out in like August, September for the previous year.
Yeah.
So we had been waiting for the 2023 hate crime report to come out. It did not come out until a couple of days before the inauguration. So this mid-January.
So it came out a year late.
Well, it came out more like 4 to 6 months late because the 2023 report usually would come out August or September of 24.
Yeah.
So it came out January of 2025, and the hate incidents were not included. There was this idea that that was being pushed by a number of the county supervisors that there was concerns about the veracity of the reports, which is something that we've heard from District Attorney Todd Spitzer for a number of years.
Wow.
And which there's no, as far as I understand, there's no basis for that. It's political, unfortunately. They also made the claim that hate crimes went down, but that's not accurate. What actually happened is they only reported on hate crimes that were prosecuted and went through the judicial system.
Okay.
But if I were to, for example, if I were to report that something that did happen to me, I had my car was vandalized. Somebody was scraping bumper stickers off of my car. That is, it's property damage, it's vandalism, that's a crime. And they're scraping off LGBTQ bumper stickers. I reported that through 211 for this hate crime report. But I didn't call the police because I'm not going to call the police for somebody vandalizing my 17-year-old car, right? Even if they did catch somebody, it's nothing's going to happen with it. But if you don't include that in the hate crimes report, it creates this illusion that it didn't happen at all.
Right.
Which is concerning.
Yes.
So the hate crimes, if you're including all of the hate crimes that were reported, they did not go down. So the county board has presented what we feel is an inaccurate representation of the problem we currently have in Orange County with hate, and it covers all demographics, right? Whether you're talking about anti-Semitism, whether you're talking about Islamophobia, whether you're talking about anti-Christian hate crimes or racism, transphobia, all of those things are covered in that report. It's not meant to be one group or another. But if you're not representing that information correctly, it changes the way that our local communities address what we would consider discriminatory policies and agenda items in our local governments.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we're trying to pay attention to is this concern that for whatever reason, that information is being manipulated.
Now, you said Groundswell lost their contract. So who prepared this report?
So Groundswell had all the data. It goes through Groundswell. They presented all of that raw data to the county. Groundswell's been doing these reports for decades, and it's only been in recent years despite the fact that the way that the information is being gathered and processed hasn't changed significantly, it's only been in recent years that we are seeing this idea that, oh, there's a problem with the veracity of the reports, which goes hand in hand with something that we're seeing in not just local politics, but our national politics, this idea that no, all of these concerns about racism or anti-Semitism or Islamophobia are not real. This is just woke. This is just DEI. And our perspective is that just saying that it doesn't happen doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And that's a dangerous stance to take.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So that report in your mind, or that data, if it's not collected correctly, is not useful.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's not useful to us if you are, for example, the fact that they took out all of the hate crimes that weren't prosecuted. That's not presenting a clear image to the community.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a problem.
Because really, the whole point of this is to track, whether or not law enforcement is making a difference.
Right.
And we can't know that if you don't accurately tell us what exactly is going on year to year, like a baseline year to year.
Well, and a lot of people don't feel comfortable reporting to law enforcement. I think that was one of the arguments that was had with the county board with this discussion was the idea that, well, if it's not reported through law enforcement, then it didn't really happen. And I can say for myself, I reported a number of hate crimes and hate incidents that I personally experienced, and only one of them did I actually report to law enforcement, mostly because I didn't think that law enforcement would do anything. Mm-hmm. I'm reporting things because I feel they needed to be documented. But if somebody vandalizes my car, if somebody tries to drive me off the road, but I don't catch the license plate, like, why bother?
Or someone calls you a name, or somebody's rude, or any of those things. I mean, there's still incidents. There's still things that happened that were offensive, that made you feel uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. And it's reflective of, I wouldn't say that those things are representative of Orange County. I will
We have no way of knowing that.
Right. I will always defend Orange County. I'll even defend Huntington Beach. I think that most people who live here do not live their life with xenophobic bigotry. But just because most people don't, doesn't mean that we shouldn't address the problem inherent in the people that do.
Yeah. Yes, that's absolutely right. So Pride at the Pier is a relatively new organization. They've only been around since 2023. Mm-hmm. Before that, were you involved in any other activism, or is this the first time you've got involved?
Well, I was involved in a lot as a follower. I went to a number of small town Black Lives Matter rallies across Orange County. I went to the Women's March in 2016. I had my pink knit hat. Even as far back as 2010, I was involved in a march on the Capitol protesting cuts to our education budget. So I've been engaged in activism, but never organized in activism. I think the one exception to that is when I was in high school, we had, a conflict within the high school environment, and I had a whole bunch of petitions and got folks to come to a school board meeting at my local school board, and got folks to go up to the podium and speak as a high school student. And I think, ironically, that experience, while it's much less flashy and it was not something that would ever make the news today, you're not going to hear about small school board disagreements on CNN, but that experience was more formative to the work that we do with Pride at the Pier than some of the other, large marches and rallies and whatnot that I had attended. I will say, I think part of the reason that things are different for me now is that because I'm trans, and I had never really before been in a situation where I was the main target of something. I think even with, marching on Sacramento to protest budget cuts, it was, of course, I'm going to community college, but I'm 20, right? I'm not paying attention to these things, really. If I, going to the Black Lives Matter rallies, clearly I'm not the target in that issue, in that situation. Even the Women's March, right? Like, of course, I, as a transgender man, right, I have a uterus, and I had not transitioned at that time. So of course these things matter to me, but it wasn't direct in the same way. And I think when we started the work with Pride at the Pier, that was the first time that I had been involved in civic action, going to these city council meetings where I saw people looking at me with a level of hatred that I had never truly seen before. Having people call you slurs, having people make, deeply inappropriate comments about your body, having people call you a pedophile. These are all, incredibly, incredibly upsetting things. And there's a motivating factor there where you can either sit and be overwhelmed by it and be miserable, or you can take action. And I think that one thing that I have found as an individual is that action really is the antidote to despair. And so all those experiences that I had previously, whether it was as a follower or as an attendee, or even back to the mid-2000s and speaking at a city council or a school board meeting about a teacher we liked, these actions are all a way to respond to something that feels overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It was a long answer.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It was a long answer. Nope. It's all good. I learned, basically that you have become more interested because you have attended all these, board meetings and civics type events, and that's kind of drew you into it and made you realize that we were missing something here in Orange County. Mm-hmm. We did not have proper representation for the LGBTQ community at these events. And it's a good thing that you were showing up, because it showed you how many bigoted people were there, and you weren't before. So
it's a lot different when it's one thing when you're seeing it on your Facebook comments. Mm-hmm. It's a different thing when it's in your face.
Yeah, no kidding. What brought you into this community? When did you, I don't know, just because you're a trans man does not mean that you're necessarily a gay man. So where do you fit into all of this, and how did you join?
Yeah. So, I came out as bisexual when I was like 18, 19, which did not go over well with my surprisingly conservative Christian family. But the life experience of somebody who is or at least being perceived as a cisgender white bisexual girl is different than the life experience that I have now, or that other members in the community have. And I knew from a very young age that something wasn't quite lining up. But I was a child of the 90s, and there really wasn't much representation, especially growing up in the environment that I did. It's not like I was exposed to many trans people. And unfortunately, one of my formative experiences was when I was in middle school, going through puberty, and at a time where questions were going through my brain, there was a truly awful hate crime of a murder of a trans girl very close to where I lived. And the way that people talked about that and the way that she was misgendered in court and in the news, and hearing my parents say things like, well, it's unfortunate that happened, but it's kind of her, kind of his fault for, that's the kind of thing that that'll keep a kid in the closet for a long time. So I did not really gain the courage to come out, even though I knew from about my college years that I was not a cisgender woman. It took me until I was about 30 to gain the courage to tell folks and to come out and transition. And that's not been without loss. Unfortunately, I've been disowned by a large number of my family, including my parents and my brother. And I was pushed out of my work environment. I lost a whole bunch of friends. So I think that the passion that I carry in the work that I do now comes from a place where I know how hard it is to be openly queer in the time that we are in. And I think a lot of people who are outside of the community don't necessarily click that it's still a challenge. It's despite the fact that we have big televised pride parades every year, doesn't mean that it's not still incredibly difficult to be openly queer, and especially openly trans or non-binary in 2025.
And yet people think that it's a choice.
If I could, well, I will say this. I was going to say if I could choose not to be trans, I would be. But I don't think I will say that, because as much as I've experienced a lot of hardship, and there are many people who've experienced far more hardship than I have, the life experience that I've had and the things that I've learned about myself and about the world around me, and the strength that I've developed because I haven't had another choice, is something that I wouldn't want to lose that. So, but I would like to not be doxxed or, harassed on the street. So that would be nice.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? You could just be normal.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to change who I am. I just want the world to see me as normal.
Yeah, isn't that true? I mean, we all want to be thought of as there's nothing wrong with us. I guess that's what normal means. There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. I'm just a guy.
Yeah. I mean,
just a regular old dude.
You're a law-abiding citizen. You pay your taxes. Mm-hmm. What more could they ask for?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a supervisor who's embezzling money, like so much money, right. and we're dealing with that here, and yet we're making people that are in the LGBTQ community feel like they're criminals. Like, yeah. Figure it out.
We're a lot more normal than
I'm sorry, but I'll take an LGBTQ people that are law abiding than a supervisor that's stealing money from the county. You know?
There's a lot fewer of us breaking laws than there are politicians. So
I mean, people that are LGBTQ probably have the same statistical probability of being criminals as anybody else, because you're normal.
We're just people.
You're not better than everybody else, and you're not worse. You are who you are.
Exactly.
So, just because I choose to wear a dress today doesn't make me a law-abiding citizen.
Right. I won't say anything. It's okay.
Don't say anything. So you were fairly young when you realized you were queer. I think that's the right word to use.
Yeah.
But you waited until you were almost 30 to proactively change your gender appearance.
Yeah. And that was just out of fear.
Right.
I didn't want to, I knew that there was a likelihood that I was going to lose a lot if I did.
And you did.
And I did lose a lot.
You said you lost your parents, your siblings. Mm-hmm. That could change.
Someday, maybe. Yeah. They know my address.
Well, they're missing out.
Yeah, thank you.
They really are. I can't imagine not wanting to be with my child because of something that they could not control. I mean, that's really, if you really break it down, that's what they have done. They created you.
Yeah.
And, you know, and God was part of that. And God doesn't create things incorrectly.
Absolutely. Well, and I
Right?
think I would imagine that that's, I mean, as you have lost a child.
Yes, I have. And
yeah.
I would do anything to bring him back. So the fact that they have basically given you up, said goodbye, and think of you as no longer here on this earth. In their reality, you're not on this earth anymore.
Yeah.
That saddens me. It really does. I can't imagine a parent doing that. I cannot imagine not loving my child because of something, first of all, that's benign. There's, I mean, other than the fact that I became more scared for my son, rightfully, you know, nothing else changed. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
I changed because I now had a different reference point.
And I think you put the nail on the head. And I think that's part of why a lot of parents struggle, is because you changed. And I think there are a lot of people who, when their loved ones, you know, come to them and say, hey, this idea that you had about who I am is different than who I actually am. It's not just that your perception of that person is changing, but I think many, whether it be parents or siblings or grandparents or whatnot, there is a pressure on you to change, because you need to, you know, in order to love your child best, maybe you need to, you know, your worldview changes, or maybe the priorities that you have change, or maybe, you know, there's the concern about, like, what are my neighbors going to think? I have to get comfortable with these things. And that internal change, I think, is harder for some people than they want to acknowledge.
Yeah, it is hard, because when you have a reality shift, you know, all of a sudden you have to figure out, what is this new reality look like? And that could be scary for some people, especially people that don't have a lot of imagination.
Yeah.
Well, I think that someone coined the term one time. Was it a deficit of imagination? Yeah, that was Bonnie Pomish, who was a guest here, used that term. And it makes a lot more sense to me now, because if you have a deficit of imagination, you're not going to be able to imagine a world where your child can thrive in it, whatever gender they are, whoever they love and whoever loves them, they will still be able to thrive.
Absolutely.
If you can imagine it, you can make it happen.
Absolutely.
So one thing that I would like to offer you, and I don't know if you'll take me up on it, but I would like to personally make contact with your parents. And I would like to tell them my story. And I won't place any judgment on them. I won't even tell them why I'm making contact with them. I will just tell them my story. That's it. Maybe I'll mail them a letter. Maybe I'll mail them a letter and ask them if I can speak to them, because I'm an activist, and I'd like them to consider being on my podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that it could change the world, because we could change two people's minds, two people's hearts. And if we could do that, that could save the whole world.
I mean, I think it's very easy for me to, well, not easy, but it's very, to want to change my neighbors is one thing. To change my community members is one thing. And it's hard. It's hard. And the grief that I've had over losing my family is a difficult one.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. You know, if I know they moved, but if I can find their address, I'll share it with you.
Okay, if you can make it happen, we will do that, and then we will have a follow-up show, and maybe we'll get your parents here.
Yeah.
If they're willing to come, I'll fly them here.
Yeah.
To be on my show, and we can talk it out.
if you can
still,
change their minds,
if you still want them back, maybe you don't want them back because of how they treated you. That's something you need to think about. But even if you don't, even if you reject them, I would like them to know what it's like to have a precious child taken from you.
Yeah.
And how they would feel if that had happened instead of you just coming out.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's I sometimes wonder about that. I feel like
that's a reality check for them. And maybe they need a reality check because sometimes it's not enough just to exercise your choice not to be with someone. Sometimes that's not enough for you to get through to somebody. You know, the fact that they're not seeing you now, well, maybe they need to have somebody kind of show them the other side, the other perspective. But I'm offering that to you. So if you take me up on it, I will make it happen.
Yeah, I don't even know if they know. I don't know if they even know what the work that I've done with Pride of the Pier, and I couldn't tell you if they've even Googled me. So you might be telling them more than they know.
Maybe, but you might be surprised because I find it hard to believe that a parent wouldn't always love their child no matter what. Even if maybe one of your parents had to do this because the other one demanded it. It may not be both of your parents also.
It's possible,
just putting that out there. And I'm sure that there may be people listening that are living this nightmare also of losing family because they were honest with them about who they are.
And I think that's the hardest thing is the, losing your loved ones for something that is just inherently a part of who you are is a challenging thing.
Oh, it's very challenging. And it's so hypocritical. I mean, we tell our children to be authentic, to be honest, and to be good. And you can't be all three of those things at once if you can't be honest about who you are.
Exactly.
So something that parents out there, if you're listening, take it to heart. These are your precious children. These are your ticket to immortality. And your children and their children, maybe you won't have children, maybe you will, whatever, but you're still here now and they're missing out. So just putting that out there. I'd like you to tell me a little bit about this, if you don't mind. We're changing subjects.
Absolutely.
Tell me about this beautiful, colorful flags.
This is from when Nex Benedict was killed in Oklahoma around this time last year. And for any of your listeners who aren't super familiar, Nex Benedict was a high school student in Oklahoma who identified as non-binary, used primarily they/them pronouns, and had been subjected to significant bullying for a long time. And this... there were conflicts that arose out of the bathroom bans. Nex was assigned female at birth, and so was required to use the girls' bathroom. Didn't have another option. And one day, in about a year ago, was followed into the bathroom by a number of other girls, or number of girls, who then proceeded to beat Nex very badly. And Nex went home from school, was taken to the hospital, and then the very next day died due to internal head trauma. And there is, just like whenever there is any kind of hate crime, which I'm sure you're familiar with, there's always a lot of people who want to talk about, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe this was because this person was a minority, or maybe it wasn't. But at the end of the day, we know for a fact that Nex was targeted because of their gender identity, and was a victim of violence. And shortly after that violence, died. And Nex was 16, I believe. Oh my God. Which is obviously horrific. And especially for it to happen so close to the 25th anniversary of the murder of Matthew Shepard. A lot of people in the community were reeling from that. It's just this, like, why can't we escape this cycle? And so Pride of the Pier held a vigil at the end of the pier in Huntington Beach. We brought the giant pride flag again, had some speakers who came and spoke, including Jazz Waring, who is as far as I know, the only out non-binary or trans pastor in Orange County. They are wonderful, always have something lovely to say. But we gave the attendees an opportunity to write on Post-it notes their wishes and dreams for a world that is... Sorry, I'm emotional. Their wishes and dreams for a world that is worthy of necks. These Post-it notes went in here, and we don't bring them out to share because a lot of these things are personal. But when I was trying to organize them, I saw a lot of the things that were being said. And without quoting anybody and, betraying, the confidence that they had in putting these things in here, a lot of the themes were, just this level of grief for that this was a child that this happened to, and, searching for a way forward and searching for a way to build a safer future, for LGBTQ youth, and not necessarily knowing how, but having the energy and the motivation to pursue whatever action leads to that better future. And so we Pride of the Pier does not have a brick and mortar office yet. Someday, maybe, but we don't even make salaries. We're all volunteers. So, but this stays in my workspace, in my home. And it's a constant reminder to me of what we do this for. Mm-hmm. I think as a transgender American, and we're filming this shortly after the inauguration, as there's been a lot of executive orders and things that are being said. It's staggering. It is incredibly upsetting to watch the things that are being said and the actions that are being pushed through that target the LGBTQ community and negatively impact us. And sometimes, even as a leader in the community, which I've somehow found myself in this situation, I do have times where I just want to hide in a closet and just stop fighting. But it's
called outrage fatigue.
Yes. It's
outrage
a lot.
Fatigue. That's because I feel that way almost every day after I read about 3 different news headlines, and and every one of them gets me more and more outraged at how things are done in this country, in this world, and then I just get so fatigued by it. I just have to turn off my phone and say, "We're done for today. I can't do anymore." Yeah,
and it's and that is. The little conspiratorial side of me says that's the intention. To
make you so just overwhelmed by the negativity that you just don't want to participate at all. It's easier just to hide than to get out there and put your face on it and actually exert energy on, like Sisyphus pushing.
Yes, just up the hill,
constantly
over and over.
Trying. Yeah. I feel like Sisyphus most days here.
Exactly.
But I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere.
and this is why we keep going.
I know. Right? And this is why I keep going. I brought these out earlier. There's a few of them here. This is one that my friend gave me. Oh, this actually was from a yoga class that collected good deeds. I don't know if you can see that. Good deeds in honor of Blaze. And that's I had one of these given to me this is a jar. It's full of little Post-its and notes. And this one says, I did a random act of kindness and I bought a small child in line way behind me what she wanted, a berry sundae.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that sweet? Mm-hmm. And this is just one of these jars. I have 3 of them. One of them was from a family, a very, very kind family friend and her children. And another one was, I think, from a religious school also. Mm-hmm. So, people out there do care. There are a lot of people that care about this issue and about people that are affected by hate, because most of us don't want to live in a world where people have to worry about being killed because they are not liked because of who they were born, how they were born.
Absolutely.
So I think the majority of people would agree with that statement. And it's a small minority of people that don't let us or don't want us to have a pride flag on a pier.
Yeah.
And that's just my opinion, but they're vocal, they're loud, and they're proud. But we're going to change that.
Absolutely. And that's why we need to remember all of the, the good deeds in your jar and the wishes in mine.
Yes. This is positivity that we need.
And it seems so, I know that there's a lot of people in the, in activist spaces that, who sometimes have a derisive attitudes towards the positivity mindset of oh, we're just, think positive. We're going to, keep moving forward, keep the smile on. But I learned, I heard a story a while ago that has stuck with me, and it was out of the Holocaust, and how there are the people who made it through were not the folks who, decided to go dog eat dog and, I'm just going to make sure that I get fed, or I'm just going to make sure that I stay alive. If I have to betray somebody else so that I can live another day, then I'm going to do that. Those were not the people who made it through.
Yeah.
The folks who made it through were the ones that were always keeping an eye on their neighbors. They were the people who were always, doing whatever they could to bring hope to their community. And obviously many, many people did not make it through. But I think there's something to be said about the idea that if we give up on that positivity, then our fuel to keep going it's going to dry up. Yeah.
So, hope is a great fuel.
Hope is a great fuel.
I know. I that's what I'm here for. Give people hope that we can be resilient, and we're not going to let these losses stop us from changing the world.
Absolutely.
We just won't. We can't. We can't do that. I want to thank Kane Durham for being on my show today. You're a very brave human. You're a good person, and you're trying to make this world better, and I appreciate you and what you're doing. Thank you. Thank you from our community, from the heteronormative community and all other communities that care about people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we do care. Most people out there care and want you to be successful.
So as a reminder, Pride of the Pier, we are a queer advocacy nonprofit in Orange County, but we're open to allies as well. So you don't have to be a part of the LGBTQ community to get involved. If you are interested in donating to the work that we do, this QR code goes to our donate page. If you're interested in following the work that we do, we have a number of social media platforms, and we'll have up on the screen the links for our Instagram and our Blue Sky. We have a few other platforms as well. We're trying to do a podcast, so we will take some tips from you.
I'll be on your podcast.
I love that. Absolutely. If you are interested in looking at some of the work that we've done in the past, you can also go to our website, which is www.prideatthepier.org, all spelled out. And we'd love to have you engage with us, and we take volunteers. So.
#Blaze It Forward is a campaign my family started in 2018 after our son Blaze was murdered. #Blaze It Forward provides the inspiration to thousands of people to repair the world with intentional acts of kindness. If you would like to learn more about Blaze and how you can make a difference, check out www.blazebernstein.org or join our Facebook group at #Blaze It Forward. You can also check out my website for this podcast at www.PeppTalksWithJeanne.com. There you can follow along with my podcasting adventures and learn more about my fascinating guests and their passion projects. I would like to thank all of the volunteers who help make my philanthropic endeavors a reality. Today, that includes my producer, Eli Moskowitz. all of the volunteer crew members who join us, and a special thank you to my son Jay Bernstein for the original theme song you hear at the beginning and ending of each show. This has been another episode of Pep Talks with Jeannie. Until next time, keep on making this world a better place.